Excellent presentation. Another example, I suppose, of Nordic innovation. I mean, we had Leon von Barlow yesterday. I think Leon is Dutch. He was speaking about building smart international, and indeed, I know Kieran McNally is on the call for the breakout sessions. But Kieran and I did some work on a report for Built Digital recently, which looked at, the Nordics, Australasia, and the UK as three regions in the world where, there was quite a high level of maturity in BIM and digital adoption. And of course, countries like Denmark, they have laws, that require companies to adopt BIM and digital. They're actually regulations, and if they don't use it on public projects, they're reported. So this is obviously one extreme, but I like the message, Brendan, of keep it simple. And actually, yesterday I spoke ad nausea about three simple ingredients for a roadmap: one of motivation, one of collaboration, and one of enablement, to try and keep articulating the benefits, but also the lessons in using BIM and digital technologies. Collaboration is a cultural thing. We need to do much more of that, and obviously give the people the skills, like what Carolina was talking about earlier, about right from the schools, give them the skills to change the culture, because a lot of the people who are at senior level maybe don't have those skills. So listen, what we might do is just open it up for questions, just looking here. And thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Ronan. And also thank you, Carolina, who sadly is not with us, but there were really three excellent presentations. Question here for Ronan. In Ireland, we have a very fragmented industry, lots of small micro companies, and this makes it very difficult to introduce new processes. In this environment, how do we best leverage these tools that you've highlighted?
So it's not a unique problem to Ireland. We work in a construction industry, and I've worked in many locations, and it's the same issue. You've got a very siloed industry. My experience has been that the contractors will lead the way on these things. So a lot of the tools that I've been demonstrating have been led by the contractors. And when I say the contractors, I mean the lead or management contractors. And they will profit from these solutions, and they will figure out how to mandate them and get them on the supply chain. So you will find that there's no easy answer to that question, but the bigger organizations will lead the way, and then over a period of time, and as I say, it's an 8 to 10 year period. I've not seen it happen faster than that. You will get the skills filtering down through the broader industry, and then these smaller companies, the micro companies, will get to use them. So it's not there's no quick short answer to that question. There's no quick easy solution to adopt. No. And it's the massive challenge that the technology companies face in terms of servicing our industry, and it's the same problem that the industry has in terms of identifying and buying the right solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wondered, why is it taking longer than the average ice age to get the industry to adopt BIM? Because, I don't think Carolina had the time, or she didn't the brief to go into it, but it must be about supporting these smaller companies. I'm talking about smaller design houses, smaller construction firms, subcontractors. The vast bulk of the industries we know is made up of these really small companies. And what can we do to kind of try and support them more? And this is open to Brendan, or to all, or to you, Brendan, also. What does Dallas do?
Yeah, well, I'll jump in there. And you're right. You're right. It's difficult to get people involved. It's because BIM is such a big thing. You go to a conference and you sit there like, oh, EIRs, AIRs, 9650. Yeah. And if you're a small contractor, you're sitting there going, no, I don't know how I have the time to do this. It's difficult. So what you really need to do is start it simple. We have a client in Ireland, one of the top contractors in Ireland. And what they do, they use our system just for the 3D viewer. That's all they use. And they allow people to use it on site. And they've had people going, oh, this interaction with this model, I can't break it. It's not scary. It's actually really positive. And what they found now is that site managers are coming back to the digital team and saying, tell me more about this. I want to know more about BIM. Can we get Revit on the laptops? I want to interact with it more, because they gave them a simple way of interacting with the model, which at the end of the day is the central part of this. There's data behind it. That, It doesn't need to be very difficult. But then, and to switch gears slightly, we have clients, public clients, who don't have models they don't get given the model. A lot of contractors use BIM, but they use it for their own because they know it's more efficient. It's not to hand over to a client, and hasn't been in the client requirements, maybe in the HSC and stuff like that for the last while. So I think once we see the mandate come in, it will really start to push because more people will see it. And again, and I'm gonna bang this drum. Keep it as simple as possible. It doesn't have to be simple for everyone, but 90% of the construction workforce, it needs to be simple for.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to hear lots of stories tomorrow from, John Siskin's son and BAM and, Tony Woods. I was on the radio interviewed him recently, and he talked about seeing BIM 15 years ago. He could see the value of introducing BIM and modularizing his steel reinforcement business. He could see, and then of course COVID kind of just accelerated that. And Ronan, you talked about this as well. You talked about the fact that so few companies are getting excited about or using ISO. Like the Nordics don't seem to get excited about it. They don't seem to worry too much about it.
No, but the challenge is as well as it's echoing what Brendan is saying. The reason this is so hard to do is that if I spend 1,000 hours putting together a very detailed model inside of a traditional fee structure or inside of a hard bid project, it's very hard to claw that time back. But I may not get the value from those 1,000 hours. So the challenge is when you're a mechanical electrical design consultant and you're suddenly handed a contract where you have to hand over not only a 3D model, but you got to hand over a model with all the data in it for pumps and fans and everything else, and you don't get any value from that. The value is further down the food chain. So that's where when the owners start mandating these kind of solutions, they're also going to have to sit back and figure out, okay, we have to spend more money. Where's the right place to spend that money? Because unless it's an investment, this is not going to happen. So the industry is based on very tight margins. The consultants are fighting for small amounts of work or the same amount of work, and they're gonna win on the lowest fee. So what I find is, particularly on the consultancy side, they always underestimate and under-resource the amount of work that goes into these things. And then guess what? It's the last thing out the door, so it never gets done. They're more interested in getting the drawings out, but they don't care about the data sets that are in a model. And they wait for someone like Brendan to set up a system and start red flagging all the stuff that's missing. And then they put their hand up going, oh, it's not in my fee, not doing it. And then the fun starts. So it's about balancing the equity, and there's a lot more work gets done at the front end, but the value gets actually extracted at the back end. So it's trying to understand who's adding value when, and make sure they get paid for that value. And in terms of the ISO, this is where all these things are going to come colliding together. Unless we implement the ISO standards and we actually use Uniclass and we actually start creating proper structured information in these models, we're never going to get to use AI the way it could be used, because AI does not work on top of all the unstructured information that swirls around in our industry. And we have a multi-trillion-dollar industry based on completely wacky, out of kilter, unstructured, chaotic information. And you can try and put it into an AI algorithm, and it's just going to put its hands up going, this does not compute. So we do need the ISO standards to be imposed. We do need classification to be imposed, and we do need to see what Autodesk do with this former platform around structuring information. Because until we structure the information, we can't use the AI to get benefit from it.
Yeah, and I think we spoke yesterday. Thank you, Ronan. We spoke yesterday about return on investment. That was the middle sub-motivation action I mentioned. World Economic Forum 2018 report talked about, and I know I think David may talk about it tomorrow. The Scottish Future Trust have developed this ROI tool. It's really important. And I think companies don't need to use, full BIM, some BIM, or no BIM. I think that was spoken about at an event I was at recently as well. But I mean, really fascinating sort of comments there. Open BIM, Brendan, this is really important to Daleks, isn't it? You mentioned IFC, you mentioned BCF. That was, again, we talked about that yesterday. How much is this used in the Nordic countries?
Oh, they're not way ahead of us. That's the wrong to say. They have a different approach to it. They use the ISO 19650 published and shared files and work in progress, but they don't really call it the 19650. That's what they refer to. It's just their file sharing process. But that's what Dalux is built on, and a lot of companies. And in fairness, it's a we're not unique to that. If you're not embracing that interoperability, you're not going to get anywhere with your software. That's for sure. I know that well enough. But I think what we do see is a huge amount of information in the models in the Nordics, more than we would here. They have hospitals, for example, they have the same problem in government procurement as we do here. They have the same issue with use of new technology due to unions. They have all those problems, but they do hand over models. There's a thing in Ireland and maybe the UK to a bit where it's well, that's my model. You can't have my model. Whereas that's not an issue in the Nordics. They're much more open. They're trusting of each other. They're not as maybe deeply contractual as we can be. And I don't want to go too far to that, but so they do tend to share it, and they get much better outcomes through the life cycle of the building because they share the models much better. And so the interoperability, flexibility of what you use is much higher.
I think you'll find if you delve a little bit deeper into the Nordic psyche, they're looking at this in the universities. 10 years ago, they've been embedding this into their education program, into their school programs.
It goes way beyond that. So when you look at what goes on in those countries, the entire industry is in a collaborative frame of mind. So when you look at what goes on in the universities, the contractors are heavily invested. So when you see what's going on and some of the research is going on, like even in safety 15 years ago, it was being driven by the contractors in the universities in collaboration with the software companies and the engineers.
Skanska and so on.
Yeah, there is not the traditional UK, Irish, and I see that here in Asia, the same thing. There isn't that low-cost bid, confrontational, contractual setup. They've got a much more collaborative form of doing things, and that's where these technologies thrive. So BIM, I have always said for the last 20 years, BIM does not work in a low-cost, low-bid environment. If you're doing design, price, tender, construct, argue, claims, forget BIM. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, if you want to use these technologies, you need to have design and build contracts, collaboration contracts, partnering contracts. Then you unlock the potential. Yeah, and I think May talked about that yesterday. But if you simply put BIM requirements on top of or collateral to an existing standard format contract that's already got collaborative challenges, you're just going to make things more complex, that like Brendan had mentioned. And this idea of keeping it simple. Before we finish up, any questions, please put them in the chat. I just want to talk to you about, Brendan and Ronan, about this idea of sort of information creators and information consumers. Like, for example, I'm a quantity surveyor. So what we do is we consume the information we get from the structural, the mechanical, the electrical, architectural people, and then we try to create another piece of information, which is a budget, a bill of quantities, or whatever. Is this the big problem here, that we're not actually educating the next generation in how to become, to work more collaboratively and in a more disciplinary environment, so that they're coming out sort of having worked with architectural and engineering students and having created information that we can consume, because sometimes quantity surveyors get models that are just inaccurate or incomplete, and they're not trained to use this.
Yeah, and I think we see that in the Nordics. We have a product which we called quantities. So I can take a model into Dalux and pull the quantities out. I can say I want to see electrical or the structural, whatever it is. I could just pull the quantities out. It's not a QS package. It's not BuildSoft, but it does allow a subcontractor to say, here's the last model I got. I pulled the quants out. Here's the next one. I pulled the quants out. I can see the difference very easily. That's an important thing. But that is because the models are relevant. They're up to date. They're the architect, the structural, the civil. They're all working together to make sure that the model is up to date and available to the QS. So it's priced properly. That's keeping the model up to date is huge.
And is it about build it right before you build it at all? This is what the Autodesk speak. That language again, that you spend the time building it correctly digitally, like they do in the aeronautical and the automotive industries. Let's face it, you wouldn't get a construction contractor to build an airplane or a
No.
locomotive, you know. So is that really reality that we should be able to build it digitally first before we go to site?
I don't think it's a reality to completely do it. I think you can mitigate a lot of the risks by using it, but I don't think human nature, you know, availability of materials, things change, you know, and that's the...
And inevitably in construction, things will change, different sites, different teams.
Yeah.
We can't really replicate the factory. Okay, listen, guys, that was fantastic. Ronan, thank you so much. Can I wish you well? Can I wish you well? Hopefully it won't be too long before we meet in person.
And you, the next time I see you, I'll be celebrating your retirement. So good luck.
You've told the world now. You've told the world now. So, but I don't know if the world.
Ronan.
How many people? And Brendan, thank you.
No problem. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. See you this evening. We're going to switch now over to our breakouts. I hope I haven't run over. Jack, over to you.